welcome to Cinema in Context, where we discuss all things film and the connections between. My name is Jeremy Downing.
I'm William Chen.
And I'm Sarah Watt.
And welcome back, Sarah!
Hey. Thanks, guys!
For those of you listening who don't know, or maybe haven't caught the last few episodes, Sarah's been out of the country. She's been in the United Kingdom. We recorded a couple of episodes remotely, and then
you replaced me!
We just had some internet issues and technology issues, so Sarah very graciously decided to tap out for that time.
But it's good to be back, guys. Especially talking about these two films.
It's so good to be back. And we've just enjoyed a lovely dinner with Sarah and her husband Doug, who provided for us. Hey, William.
It was lovely. Lots of smoky sausage, risotto,
and wine. You finally got to a wine episode. Sarah's missed all of our previous evening wine episodes.
And I'm partial to a drop of wine, and so I always think, I wonder whether that will ameliorate the podcast experience. So I guess we're about to find out.
We're on the tea now, dear listeners. Tea. And I brought chocolate for us if we'd like some chocolate.
Let's see how we go.
We'll see how we go. Sarah, give us a bit of an update. Like your time overseas. Were there any film highlights? Anything that is worth alluding to for our listeners?
It'll be a little bit late now for everybody because it came out a couple months back, but we thoroughly enjoyed, or rather I went by myself and thoroughly enjoyed Nicolas Cage in The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. What an extraordinary film. What an extraordinarily delightful fun time with the wonderful Nick Cage. But I will just say, rather than give you a litany of all the films that I did get to see, a film that I saw in Brixton, that unfortunately I don't know if and when we're going to get it here at all, is an extraordinary over 2-hour documentary about the wonderful Italian composer Ennio Morricone.
Hey.
It's called Ennio. 2.5 hours might sound long, but my goodness, we're talking about a man who made it into his 90s and only died in 2020, but also just had an exhaustive career. And the film is an absolute blast. It takes you right from the beginning of his pop song writing career all the way through the Dollars series. You know, the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns with Clint Eastwood. The whole film is absolutely ecstatic, ecstasy-inducing. And I really do hope that viewers in New Zealand do get a chance to see that at some point. Or we can just watch it if it streams on something. That would be fine. But the big screen, big sound experience of Ennio Morricone, of course, can't be beaten. So that was a real highlight. But guys, it didn't make up for missing my time with you.
Aww.
So let's get into it and talk about two blockbusters of our time.
I do just want to say, though, and I've plugged this before, but Sarah has her own podcast where she focuses on film composers. And I think the first one was on Ennio Morricone, isn't it? And it's The Sound of Movies.
That's right. Thanks, Jeremy. Nice
No
plug.
worries. I love it. It's beautiful. I've already mentioned Doug. Doug edits it as well, doesn't he?
That's right.
It's got wonderful editing and little snippets of the magic of the different composers.
Yeah. Thanks.
Nice. Well, each month at Cinema in Context, we discuss two films, one current and one retrospective, with some connection. It could be the same director, the same actor, or a similar theme. This month, we are discussing Top Gun Maverick, which came out very recently, and TRON Legacy, which came out 12 years ago in 2010.
My goodness.
The connection being, well, there's a few connections, but the big one being they're both 80s films that are, I guess, requels was the scream word that was used, but sequels with a sense of
Lego
rebooting.
sequels, I like that a lot.
Lego sequels. And they also have the same director, his name's... what's his name?
Joseph Kosinski.
Joseph Kosinski. Thank you, Sarah. Well, Sarah, do you want to give us a bit of an introduction on Top Gun Maverick?
Sure would, Jeremy. Back in the olden days, Tom Cruise shot to fame in don't ask me what sort of aeroplane it was. I know you're all out there going, it's a MiG-16 or something. Look, they don't pay me to know about the makes of aeroplanes. They pay me to look at Tom Cruise in the original Top Gun and go, there is a star in the making, ladies and gentlemen. Fast forward, well, actually, I haven't done the math. How many years is it on?
30-something?
30-something years on. Director Joseph Kosinski convinced Mr. Cruise to return for the sequel of Top Gun Maverick. So we've got Tom Cruise reprising his role as Pete Maverick Mitchell, brought back to the elite pilot training scheme called Top Gun, not to fly this time, but to train up bright young things to embark on a hitherto secret mission against an enemy whose name we never know. And I think that's a mark of the film, is that there is a foreign enemy and there is a plot that needs to be deployed, but we do not need to know who our enemy is in this in this instance. So Maverick comes on board, and in doing so, he is brought... Oh, and Jeremy, you didn't say about spoilers, but guys, let's face it, if you haven't seen Top Gun, get off this.
Well, I was going to save it for
go.
after this, but if you're going to spoil
Right.
it... So, warning, dear listeners,
Yes,
there is a
now's your
spoiler
time.
warning. If
Yeah.
you haven't seen either film, I would suggest pausing this episode and coming back to it at a future date. Over back to you,
And
Sam.
well, mainly my spoiler was, of course, about the original Top Gun, when
Oh,
Anthony
right.
Edwards' character Goose... aren't I allowed to say this?
No, sorry.
must know this.
I was being overly dramatic.
Dies. And one of the characters in Top Gun, Maverick, is his son, played by Miles Teller, who obviously bears a bit of a grudge against Pete Maverick Mitchell, based around the death of his father. That's all I have to say about that film, really. We'll come back to it.
I'm sure there will be more to say, though. William, give us a bit of an overview of Tron Legacy.
All right, the grid. Dun, 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 dun. Tron Legacy is the many years in the making, also 30 years in the making sequel to the 1982 cult classic Tron, where Disney, on a whim, spent a lot of money creating amazing computer-generated scenery and groundbreaking special effects in service of a movie about what it takes to be inside a computer. What are programs? What is data? How can we visualize this stuff in a world of heroes and villains trying to unlock the secrets of the computer? And now we are in the 2010s, and technology has traveled a heck of a long way since the 1980s. Joseph Kosinski, in his debut film, creates, I think, a very, very interesting movie about fathers and sons, which I guess Top Gun Maverick is about as well.
Yep.
Where the son of the main character of Tron, in this case, Sam Flynn, played by Garrett Hedlund, misses his dad greatly, who was, in both movies, played by Jeff Bridges. One thing leads to another. He gets sucked into the grid, and lots of things happen that concern the fate of both the grid, this computer world created by Kevin Flynn, his dad, and our own world.
Wow. Did you say the son of Tron?
Oh,
The son of Kevin
the
Flynn.
son of Kevin Flynn.
Son of-
Sorry, Tron is a... this is going to get super nerdy.
Yeah, it gets super meta.
Because this is one of my biggest issues with the film, is I
Yes.
don't fully understand the whole Tron character.
Tron is one of the main characters in the first movie. He's played by Bruce Boxleitner, who is one of Jeff Bridges' pals. And the conceit of the first movie is that the programs that the programmers create take on their likeness, which is a really cool idea, right? So you have Jeff Bridges creating Clue in the first movie and the second, and he looks and behaves just like Jeff Bridges, almost as if he had imbued his code with part of his personality.
Right.
So Tron was a protector program. He was a warrior program in the first movie, who became Jeff Bridges' partner when he got sucked into the computer and helped him save the world, basically. And in the second movie, well, Tron is something else entirely.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to jump in with Tron. 'Cause
Please.
I saw Tron at the IMAX cinema in Auckland. I have a lot of issues with the IMAX cinema in Auckland, as I've talked about in the past. I think the sound quality is not good, and I have other issues as well. Anyways, that was at a time, I saw that film at a time where I had never experienced it before, and so all of my criticisms of IMAX were not present. And I went along by myself, and it was a 3D film. I put the 3D glasses on. Remember the days where we used to do that?
It's coming back. James Cameron deems it so.
Wow, with Avatar 2.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. And the key thing I remember is that it was a Wizard of Oz moment where you put the 3D glasses on and didn't notice that your film wasn't in 3D. And then when Sam Flynn went into the computer world, it all became 3D. which was very cool.
Remember
Super
that?
cool.
I
was
did
cool.
see it in the cinema, but I
Yeah.
didn't remember that.
It was cool for about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because then your eyes readjust and you don't notice that it's 3D anymore.
Sure.
What other movie? Coraline did that as well, right?
Right.
The stop motion movie where the real world is flat, but when Coraline enters into the dream world, the entire 3D just stretches out. And it's very much a 2010s thing.
Can I leap in? This is like, you didn't ask for this, but this is what you get. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a little bit older than these gentlemen, as I make a point of saying so every time. Ladies and gents, back in the actual 80s, when I was just a wee gal, the television, because we only had the television to watch, yeah, there weren't other options. I don't mean that there weren't cinemas, of course there were, but I'm talking about this, the TV, yeah. They did this version, a 3D version of a King Kong movie, and at KFC they were giving away or selling blue and red 3D, cardboard with cellophane 3D glasses, and everyone got together. It was like event. What was it called? Like event viewing back in the day. Yeah, I mean this literally. It was sleepover time. You get all your mates together on the Saturday night. The television program goes on. We all strapped on these little cardboard blue and red 3D glasses, and I was expecting some sort of Alice in Wonderland transformative experience. And I hardly need tell you that my family's little television and this little bit of KFC cardboard did not actually give me the awesome 3D experience, but I remember the build-up and the anticipation of we're going to watch a film in 3D.
Yeah.
And I suddenly can't remember the name of it, but it was like a King Kong film.
Do you know,
and it was a big deal for us.
I love that. I love that anticipation as a kid, but then the huge disappointment when things don't pan out. You're
That's
making me
right.
remember when I was working at the Embassy Theatre in Wellington at the height of sort of 3D film time. And there was, I don't remember what the film was. Could have been the Tintin movie. I don't remember. And I remember this quite elderly couple walking down the quite long corridor to the downstairs cinemas to see a 3D film. And of course, the real D technology is those black glasses with the clear lenses.
Yep.
that-
Polarized.
And they help bring the film to life in 3D. And they came down and they bought their tickets, and then they pulled out their what probably was like their KFC 3D glasses with red and blue cellophane. So we've got our glasses, and I said, and my heart just kind of warmed to them because they were so cute. They'd kept their glasses for probably about 20 years.
Yes, that's right.
And I said, it's actually different technology now, and you'll need to purchase these ones for $2 or something. And they said, okay, no worries. So they did that, but then they shuffled off and watched their movie. And I might have even snuck into the cinema just to see their reaction, and there was sort of
Hopefully their minds were blown.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah.
So that was
that's
a
what
lovely
it was
moment.
like for us in the olden days, Jeremy. It was
Yeah.
just cellophane. But anyway.
Well,
so, yeah.
speaking of the 80s and speaking of nostalgia, guys, Tron. Just Tron.
I tried watching it the other day and turned it off.
I
really?
haven't seen the
I didn't
first
get it.
one.
I was like, I
haven't
don't
seen
know
the
what's
first
going
one?
on.
I don't think I
Okay,
have.
well, let me tell you a story. So Tron was probably one of my earliest movie memories. When, it was the late 80s. I was very young, 3, maybe 2 even. But we had 2 Betamax tapes. Ooh, Betamax.
Yeah.
And one of them was The Little Mermaid, which came out in 1989, and then Tron, which came out a couple of years earlier.
Who directed the first one? Do you happen to know? Is it relevant or
I
not?
can't remember the name.
Is it
Sorry.
is it a somebody?
The person, I think, produced the second one.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll leave it there. Okay.
The first one was very much a tech demo by people who would end up becoming, the computer animation department at Lucasfilm
Wow.
and Pixar and,
Yes.
just very, very cutting edge stuff. But as a kid, that was my favorite movie. Like, I had no idea what was going on. I knew computers were involved, I knew video games were involved, and it was just a really pretty movie.
Yeah.
And even, I rewatched Tron last year during the height of the pandemic, and it's a really slow, like, cult classic sci-fi movie. But I would argue so's the sequel. Both these movies are so unique in what they want to achieve, and they're very, very cool mirrors of each other. The original Tron, again, I would argue is not a great movie, but I think is a very, very good movie, and very, very ambitious in a way you don't see in a lot of 80s movies, or even movies today. And similarly, Tron Legacy, 2010, what a year. Like, I just moved to the States. This was the first movie I ever saw in Duluth at the Marcus 10 Lakeside. It was at the big faux IMAX. Went to see it with my roommate Bob, who was a big, Tron head as well. And it's like, oh man, this image is amazing.
Yeah.
And just watching this probably in its entirety for the first time since 2010.
You're talking about Tron Legacy now.
Tron Legacy,
yeah.
It really took me back to 2010. It's like, man, there were good movies back then. Good movies that were not sequels to Thor 3.
Yeah.
Or, were not tied to these long-running franchises. I love Fast and Furious, but once you head to number 10 in the franchise, it's like, come up with something new. And Tron Legacy is a franchise, but it's something that is very, very happy to give the audience something brand new that they've never seen before and be willing to shell out the big bucks to just have this amazing experience of light and sound. And that's why we go to the movies,
It is.
ladies
You're
and gentlemen.
so right, William. Light and sound. Because, I can get a little bit derisory about the plot of Tron Legacy, and I can certainly say a few things maybe about some of the performances, but flippin' heck, if you just want a spectacle, you're absolutely right. Back in 2010 in the IMAX, it was extraordinary, and even more recently on Disney Plus, on my reasonably average television, it's spectacular looking. I can't believe that it holds up 12 years later in terms of its aesthetic, because you would have thought it was the aesthetic part that was going to, that technology is designed to push on, isn't it, and to be more impressive. But it just, to me, shows how impressive it was originally. It's still, look, what a film. And with that incredible soundtrack by Daft Punk. I mean, all of it is beautiful. Not just the disco scene. It's not a disco. The nightclub scene. It's spectacular, isn't it?
It's one of the best scores in modern film history. I can't think of a score that, the Mad Max score was pretty phenomenal, and Inside Out, and there's some other scores out there. I just realised they're my two top films of the decade. But that Daft Punk score, I immediately went and bought it on iTunes. Remember when that was a thing? And I just thought, wow, this, and it was harking back to Blade Runner, Vangelis,
So much synth.
and like you said, light and sound, and wow. In terms of light and sound, what a joy.
Absolutely.
And I think my issues with the movie were the same issues I had back in 2010. I agree with you. It's really held up. I think that I didn't know. I think the Tron character is the biggest what's going on for me, and it's supposed to be this thing, and I don't understand. We'll get to Maverick soon, but I think Maverick did a much better job of bringing people along for the ride who had or hadn't seen the original film.
Yes.
My thing with Tron is the first act, the first hour is really great. I love the setup. I love the, Sam Flynn being thrust into the world and having to fight in the arena and the bringing of the Tron bikes in.
And that's pretty exciting, right? First time round. Absolutely, yeah.
And watching it second time round, it's so clean.
Yes.
Like, the editing is pitch perfect. Like, the what they call it, the laserdisc fights, and the bikes and the streams of light, where everyone is at all times. Most of it's animated, but it feels so tactile. Like, man, it's very, very well done.
They must have had a mixture of. It would be interesting to know what the real elements were, because it did feel really real.
Well, I was reading some of the behind the scenes stuff, like as we'll very much talk about with Top Gun as well. Joseph Kosinski. Tron was his first movie, and before, as is said in many, many interviews of the years, he trained as an architect, right? And so in Tron, one of the things he wanted was as much real-world, tangible materials as possible.
Right.
So the sets weren't just made from plasterboard and made to look like stone. They were made from stone and glass. And he wanted as much of that to be physical as possible, because he was saying the tangibility of something like that on screen is just different to either something that's fake or something that's digital.
I think that's the biggest strength of the movie. There's a confidence in vision, I guess. There's a confidence, whether it all works or not. I'd much rather see that confidence and that, really stepping out and trying to make something that it stands on its own 2 feet, like you were saying, William. It's its own world, it's its own feel. And I think the film really succeeds in that way. I think the second act is where the film really dips, when when you've got the army coming in, and again Tron, and when you've got the sequence at the nightclub with what's his name, Michael Sheen. It's a little bit tonally a bit weird. But then the last act, the last half an hour, when they start flying through the air and they're trying to get to all of that stuff is fantastic. And
it's an interesting film. I mean, I'm interested what you've just told us, William, because I'd made a little note, snarky that I am, saying would have been a bore to shoot and act in it with all that green screen, but it sure is gorgeous to look at. And I mean, I still think there probably is a high degree of green screen, and so therefore, performance-wise, it wouldn't have been hugely fun. And I know that all of us are performers in some way, so we can, empathise. I don't think that forgives Garrett Hedlund. I mean, so Garrett Hedlund, ladies and gentlemen, he's all right, and he does what's on the page. And to be fair, apart from all that sort of biblical mumbo-jumbo, the Cain and Abel, the Castor and Pollux, but they don't mention Pollux, just Castor, and then Zeus, but they don't call him Zeus, they call him Zeus, and you know what I mean? But anyway, all that business. There's not a lot for Garrett Hedlund to do, but also I don't think he's up for it. But I did think at the time, so here's the funny thing, before I rewatched it, I thought, I'll go back and I'll read one of my very, very early reviews, long before I was reviewing for anybody. I was just writing on my own blog. And would you believe, because I called my review, it's biodigital jazz, man. It is my top-hitting blog post of all time on my film review blog. Because obviously, if you'll forgive the term, film nerds around the world have typed in, it's biodigital jazz, man, and then they hit on my thing, and then they realise they don't want to read this film review, but I already get the hit, don't I? God bless the internet. Anyway, so I reread my review, and at the time I thought, this will be a bit of a launch pad for this Garrett Hedlund fellow. And a couple of years later I went to Cannes and I saw him in playing Jack Kerouac in a real art house film called On the Road. I'm fairly sure that was right. But then what?
I thought he was okay.
But then what?
He hasn't done anything else. He's not done anything else.
He's like the Taylor Kitsch of the 2010s.
Wow, true.
And that's interesting because Taylor Kitsch, I think, is in
John Carter.
It's in the other Joseph Kosinski film, Only the Brave, which we
gosh.
haven't yet spoken about. But oh my gosh, that's such a funny...
And he was also in John Carter of Mars, that other Disney massive mega budget kind of box office flop.
And then that's right, these guys. Whereas Tom Cruise, can I just say, what a launch pad. And he's actually made something of his career, hasn't he? Good old Tom.
Can I just talk about the Kubrick element in Tron Legacy?
His apartment?
Yeah, the headquarters of Jeff Bridges' character. And just the referencing of films, and it just comes back to the confidence in what's going on in that movie.
Which makes sense, doesn't it? The architect and the art design and all that, the art direction, and all that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I can see in your notes you've said Cillian Murphy.
Yeah. Oh, well, I did. I mean, I was really excited to see Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, me too. He's in one scene and then he's gone.
And then that was that.
Well, he was obviously being set up as the main villain for the sequel, right? Which apparently the Tron 3 is in development since 2020. Fingers crossed. Hopefully it's good.
Well, to be fair, Top Gun was ready to come out, wasn't it, in 2019?
Yeah.
And we've been waiting quite a while. So we can maybe hope. Cillian, I think, is terrific in everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I was a little bit disappointed he didn't do more. Michael Sheen, who you've already mentioned, I mean, I remember at the time just going, oh my God, he's amazing. And also then going, well, he's actually, kind of Bowie meets Charlie Chaplin meets
it's like
Frankenfurter.
Just go have fun. Yeah,
it is. He's basically
it's so over the top.
And he does a lovely job.
Does he?
I think so.
He gives the movie just a burst of energy when everything's super down.
I suppose.
A bit of panache.
Yeah. Come on, did you see the bit where he uses his cane as an electric guitar?
Yes, and then he does the Charlie Chaplin sort of like,
it's like, just improvise, we'll pick the best bits, is what it feels like.
Can I just say, because this is really not particularly interesting, but I like it when directors, I love a good Venn diagram, and I like the fact that Joseph Kosinski, well, I can only think of about 4, I know he must have done more than 4 films by now, maybe, but Tron Legacy, we're saying, is his first, and then Oblivion, and then Only the Brave, which is totally different in terms of genre. It's based on fact. It's about firefighters in the wilderness. It's very, very gritty, hugely gripping, and absolutely worth watching, and you should totally, but it ain't nothing like a sci-fi type film. And then of course Top Gun Maverick, which is not a sci-fi film either, but obviously you've got your Tom Cruise in a couple of those, you've got Miles Teller in a couple of those, because he's also in Only the Brave.
Right.
You've got Jeff Bridges, who's in Tron Legacy and Only the Brave. You've got Jennifer Connelly, who's in Only the Brave and Top Gun Maverick.
Cool.
And so there's really nice, as I say, it's nice sort of Venn diagram and intersecting sets there, which I quite like.
I also had this moment watching Tron Legacy with Olivia Wilde, and I now think of her as a director more than an actor.
right,
And I was like,
that's
oh, that's
good.
right. When she first was in the movie, I was like, oh, she's quite striking.
Yeah.
Both in looks and in kind of her kind of presence.
Her character was very 2010s, it felt.
Yeah,
Yes.
she doesn't do much.
No, very, very manic pixie dream girl.
Yes.
But reading the interviews with her back in 2010, it was like we were trying to create a Joan of Arc style archetype.
Oh, what? In Tron Legacy?
In Tron
is that
Legacy,
what they were going for?
yeah, because she is praising this God character, Kevin Flynn. She's been instructed by God to kind of lead this revolution.
Right.
And it's just so funny, like watching the performance, and it's like, oh, she's like wide-eyed anime looks the
Yes.
entire movie, and it just comes off as really, really goofy.
Yeah.
And then there's that final scene of her becoming a human and pinned to the back of Garrett Headland
Yeah.
as they're riding their
Feeling
motorbike
the
along.
sun on her skin.
And she looks so thrilled.
Yeah.
And of course, it's reminiscent of Tom Cruise and anybody on the
And
back
Blade
of
Runner
his
as well,
bike.
though. It's
But,
very
yeah.
Blade Runner-y.
but yeah, true. That in that regard, but I was thinking of Jennifer Connelly pinned to the back of Tom Cruise, zooming along on a motorbike.
Well,
So-
let's pivot. Let's talk. What were people's experiences watching Top Gun Maverick, and where did you watch it?
We paid good money to see it in the IMAX, and we got very good seats for it. And I thought that the flight scenes were incredibly well done, and I'd read up a whole bunch. And as usual, good old Tom Cruise, for whom I have a lot of respect, and I know that you might as well cut in everything I've ever said about him from other episodes, Jeremy, because I really respect the fact that he does the work and the training and gains the skills in each of the things that he does, so that we, the audience, gets a genuine thrill knowing that it isn't a stunt person or CGI. And to have read that all of those young people, those pilots, went up in those planes, and what was it, something like 800 hours of footage or something to cut into a 2-hour
And
movie.
they filmed
or...
themselves, didn't they? Like
Yeah.
they had to film. The director didn't know what he got until they landed, and he looked at it later on.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I thought all that was thrilling, but I'd heard such great things and everyone was like raving about it. And the bits that are true to the original, they're true to the 80s, by which I mean the relationshipy stuff and the slightly corny stuff, still felt a little corny to me. And so I didn't love that. I didn't love the Jennifer Connelly character, although it wasn't
It's
risible,
the weakest part of the film.
but it wasn't awful. At least
It's
they
the
didn't
weakest part
stick
of the
her in
film.
like low cut tops and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They
It was
didn't.
one of the most awkwardly cut together sex scenes I've ever seen.
Yeah.
More than the original.
Well, okay, the original had lots of tongue-on-tongue
Yeah,
action
yeah.
and silhouette.
Good old Tony
and,
Scott.
and this
Yeah.
one, it cuts to both of them like snuggling in bed.
Yeah, my friend turned to me. She was like, "I like the end." She's like, "What was that?" I was like, "Oh, it's kind of referencing the old one where they lick tongues."
I mean, yeah, it definitely. Well, there was no real romance about it, and the fact that she then takes off at the end, you're like, yeah, all right then, never mind.
Yeah.
But,
Why was she there? What did she serve in the film? Was it just a chance for him to have a heart to heart and reveal his emotions because he couldn't do it in the teacher role?
I think so. And also to call back to Top Gun, which is, I mean, it's not really a movie about airplanes, everybody. It's basically a romantic drama with some airplanes in it, right?
Well, you may have read that apparently when Kosinski, so when the studio said, hey, let's do another Top Gun, they couldn't convince Tom Cruise to do another Top Gun, and I think for very good reason, until Kosinski went to see him and said, look, actually this is a relationship drama, not romantic relationship, but this is about you and Goose's son. And that was what sold Tom Cruise on wanting to be involved in the story at all. I can't remember how the exact wording is from the interview that I read, but that was the film that he wanted to make. And actually, I think that side of things worked quite nicely. Also, Maverick going to see Val Kilmer's Iceman
They did that
character.
very well because he can't speak, can he?
So
No.
Yeah, that was all
And
mind and...
wasn't that a respectful...
Yeah, it was really well done.
A respectful use of the real Val Kilmer's real throat cancer and real... the way that he is now.
Very
I thought
nuanced.
Incorporating
How
that
you
was
did how they
really
did that.
special.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was very moving, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Particularly because we know that we're seeing real Val Kilmer, somewhat diminished. I mean, he's fought very hard, but do you know what I mean? Somewhat diminished by throat cancer. I think it's throat cancer.
And you can see like real emotion in the scenes between the two.
Absolutely.
And when they hug, it's kind of like this amazing catharsis.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was very beautiful.
How was the IMAX? Do you agree with any of my criticisms, or are you quite happy to pay the big bucks?
I'm fine with the IMAX. Well, no, I don't like paying for anything, Jeremy. But but I'm fine with it. And I mean, if anything, I think there's not quite enough leg room. But it's not because I want to be able to splay out. It's just that it's pretty tight in the IMAX, isn't it? But basically, if you're not up the back and in the middle, then get out of the room. There's no way I would want the misfortune of being close up the front. Did you see Top Gun Maverick in the IMAX? No, because you don't like IMAX.
No.
Right.
So I went and saw it at my favourite cinema now in Auckland, which is the VMAX at Newmarket Event Cinemas.
And it was fine?
I see it on the recliner chairs.
Yep.
So I sit in the centre of the theatre. And the chairs not only, we talked about this before and you always have me on, the feet don't just come up, but the whole back goes
That's
back.
right.
And you go, well, that is a recliner chair. I mean, that's what recliners
that's
do.
That's
Recline.
That's right.
But, sometimes they don't
It's
in
not just
cinemas.
a footrest chair, but yeah, okay.
I should just say, I do love the Silky Otter for
Yeah.
certain films. And we went and saw Nightmare Alley there.
Yeah,
I went to
yeah.
see Sonic the Hedgehog 2 there, and it was a blast.
I mean, it's such a lovely theatre.
Yeah.
I do like how I pivoted off the actual...
But was that enough Top Gun? Was that enough of a
Okay,
Top Gun
so
experience?
you got to understand my relationship with Top Gun, which you probably do because I watched it for the podcast. I watched Top Gun for the first time for our episode that we paired it with Mission Impossible Fallout. I did not like it. I shut down watching. I very rarely shut down in a movie, but I was not interested in the flight sequences. I found the unnamed enemy quite offensive, and that it bought into America's...
which one?
This is the original.
The original, yeah.
I just find it buys into the dehumanizing of Americans' enemies, and I just found the whole film kind of repulsive. The only thing that that saved it for me is that wonderful Quentin Tarantino reading of the film that it's really about Tom Cruise's character struggling with his homosexuality. That whole
You
that
can be my wingman
yeah,
anytime.
right. And I just think that's such a wonderful subversive reading of the original film. And can I just say this latest one is very homoerotic. I know it's not the narrative of the movie, but there's a lot of chest slapping and.
Not just the beach volleyball scene?
I mean, in this one, in the new one, it's rugby, isn't it?
Well, it's
or
beach,
football.
beach,
Footy, yeah.
beach, but it's beach football, isn't
Yeah,
it? You're right, sorry.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Which, by the way,
equivalent of
they filmed and then they all went and had a big meal and then Tom Cruise watched the dailies and said, nah, you're not ripped enough. And they had to go back and spend a week in the gym and refilm that whole sequence.
I heard that was quite punishing.
Some of them spent, I read, upwards to a year.
Wow.
Getting their bodies in shape for that
Really?
scene.
And they were very competitive, I believe.
Wow.
So I went into this movie because of this podcast. I had no interest in seeing Top Gun Maverick. I don't care about planes. I can take or leave Tom Cruise. I love him as an actor, but I can't stand him as a Scientologist because of just that whole situation. And so I went along. My friend Steph came with me. I said, do you want to come and see a movie I don't really want to see? She said, I don't really want to see it either. We went along. We had a few drinks beforehand. In terms of the cinema, brilliant. It's brilliant cinema.
This is not a review for the cinema.
Wait, yeah, it is though, because this is the sort of film that lets us talk about it. That cinema is wonderful. It's
Right.
wonderful chairs and big screen. The sound is that Atmos sound. It's just
This podcast
beautiful.
is brought to you
by
the
Dolby
VMAX.
Atmos, the VMAX cinema.
Newmarket.
Everything within me didn't want to love this film, and it was really good.
Oh, good.
And I really liked it, and it was really tense and amazing.
Awesome.
And as listeners may know, I'm a huge Lady Gaga fan. I don't love that song in the film, but what I did love was that she was credited as a composer alongside
Yes.
Hans Zimmer, which I've read a review from Hans Zimmer saying she provided us the refrain of the whole film. And it's wonderful how and I know the song, and it's woven in through all the score.
Yeah.
Right.
And it has that wonderful payoff at the end.
Right.
I think Jennifer Connelly's character was pretty forgettable, but I didn't mind because it was harking back to the Top Gun previous film.
And I will just say, the fact that she's in her late 40s,
She's
or
amazing.
possibly early 50s, I
Early
really
50s,
do
yeah.
like that we have women of that age playing sexy lead,
Yeah.
mature middle-aged women leads.
I loved it. I mean, I love Jennifer
Yeah, I
Connelly,
do,
so I
very
think she
much.
was a great casting choice. And I just think that, the unnamed enemy, it wasn't an issue for me in this film because it was a harking back to the previous one.
Yeah.
I thought the way that they set up that final sequence, you knew exactly what was happening.
Yes,
You knew exactly what was
terrific.
meant to happen.
That's
So I was
right.
like, things are going to go wrong and we're going to know exactly what's
This
going
is
wrong.
a heist movie,
Yeah.
right?
True.
Or it's a Mission Impossible
Yes,
movie
that's
with the Tom
right.
Cruise angle, right?
And that was very well
'Cause-
handled, because
I
we
mean,
knew what
exactly.
what was
Not
going
only
on.
that, they gave us a computer animated demonstration
Yeah.
of exactly how the planes were going to
Like
maneuver.
Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
It was basically the trench run. I mean, it is
Yeah.
a
Yes.
trench run where they have to, bullseye this womp rat-sized target. Except instead of a straight run, now it's harder because there's curves and
Yeah.
there's a climb at the top.
And just that wonderful moment where he gets fired and then he shows them how
Yeah.
to do it. I think the other thing that we like, because my friend Steph is a teacher as well, it's a teacher movie.
Yeah.
And I actually turned to her at one point because she's a huge fan of Sister Act 2. And I just started humming the Sister Act 2 song, the do-do-do-do. Because I was like, Tom Cruise is practically Whoopi Goldberg from Sister Act 2. We could have paired this with Sister Act 2, and it would have been a great pairing, except for the scene where he leaves Jennifer Connelly's house and jumps down and the daughter sees. My friend turned to me and said, Whoopi never did that.
Can I just say, it may well be a teacher movie, but actually, if you don't mind my saying, teachers are not in the end meant to go, guys, do you know what? Forget about it. I'll do it.
Some teachers do that.
Yeah.
They lose their certification. But... William, tell us about your Top Gun Maverick experience.
Right. So I went to see it at not at the VMAX. No, I went to see it.
You didn't watch it on an airplane, did you?
No, that'd be really cool. You could feel
No,
the turns.
no.
No, it was at St. Luke's, also sponsored by. No,
Is it an event cinema?
is that? Yeah, it is a event cinema. The first thing, so I went to see it with my mum, who is kind of a fan of the first Top Gun, but read really good things about the second one. And the thing that really stood out even before the movie began was the demographics. The theater was pretty much packed, and this is like second week of release.
Yes.
Jurassic World was just around the corner, and it was, it was everyone.
That's
it was
nice.
families bring their kids.
Yep.
Buddies,
Our IMAX
couples.
was absolutely packed to the gunnels.
And so was
I will just say,
my VMAX.
which is
Right.
amazing. Yeah.
And I'm thinking there is a reason why this movie is probably going to be the highest grossing movie of the year domestically in the States. Something about this, maybe it's the pandemic, right? Maybe we want more simple entertainment. Maybe we want simple entertainment that's not tied to pre-existing property. As we were talking about, Jeremy, with Doctor Strange, movies that don't require you to do homework.
Yeah.
But I had a blast with this movie. I do think some criticisms before I get into the good stuff. Like, the movie is slightly too long, just a tad too long. And I found the third act, there's something that happens, which I was like, what?
What's that?
Do you mean he saves him,
Yeah.
saves him,
Well,
saves
which
him?
is...
Oh, when they crash.
It's a very,
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
tense, serious denouement.
Yeah.
They're being chased by missiles. It's super, edge your seat stuff. And then Tom Cruise kind of fulfills his destiny to Goose and to Rooster and sacrifices himself by taking one of the missiles head on. This
Yeah.
amazing fireball. And Miles Teller's like, no, Dad! And it's like, oh, man, this is... And he's still alive. And he now is being shot at by a helicopter. And now Miles Teller's there with him.
Yeah.
And they have to
Saving
steal.
his life.
They have to steal an old F-14, which is like, okay, so this is going into full-on Goofy town.
Yeah.
that
And
was
it's
cute.
an identical moment to The Force Awakens, where they find the old Millennium Falcon. And
Hey.
it's like, this piece of junk. And they show, it's not the plane, it's the pilot.
Yeah.
After I, kind of okay, I see what you're doing, movie. I'll go along with it. And it became a cartoon and it was really fun. But there was that break where it was like this serious movie about fathers and sons and sacrifice and learning and growth. And then, it became something else. But that's okay.
I have to say, there were at least 2 instances. There's the bit where he says goodbye to Jennifer Connelly, and I was like, oh no, he's going to
No, they were really set. No, I was like,
Yeah.
I was thinking, no, they're really setting this up to make us think he's going to die.
And then,
He's not going to die.
But then Miles Teller's like, hey, I need to tell you something.
Oh,
He's like,
yeah.
we'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
I went, no, he's
That's
gonna
like
die.
movie language for death.
But that's what I mean. I knew that they
Exactly.
were playing with that. I
It's
was
like
they're playing with
Biggs
the
and
audience.
Biggs and Luke Skywalker. It's like, hey, Luke, we'll talk about it after we come back from the mission.
No, I was genuinely worried. I was like, oh man, this is Tom Cruise going, I'll do this movie, but we're going to kill him off at the end of it, and that will be the end of that. And I thought, he'd do that.
I thought I had the double thing, right? So I was like, oh no, he's going to die.
The
Hang
double
on.
cross.
No, I was like, no, when those moments happen, I thought, oh no, that's movie language. And I was like, hang on, no, this movie's too clever for that. It's setting it up. Like,
Or does it want us to think it's too clever for that? It's going to die.
what I will say is the thing that impressed me the most, and again, my friend Stephanie, we were both agreed. She's a media studies teacher, so she's a film fan and film critic. Just really good storytelling, and like whilst there might be an element of this film that is just hitting at the right time, it is really well put together, and it does its work. It sets up that emotional story, Sarah, that you're talking about the fathers and the sons.
Yeah.
It pays homage to the original film in a really great way that doesn't also belabor the kind of nostalgia. I loved that it commits to the 80s style soundtrack and
Yes.
the imagery, and this film only works if it kind of just steps in full I don't even know what the metaphor is, fully steps into the fact that it is a military film and doesn't try and be too clever with that, because it just needs to own the fact that it's about what are they, the Navy? I don't even know.
They are the Navy.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Yeah, they are.
The flying
Navy
Navy.
pilots. I found the young people quite annoying.
Oh, there's a joke about it when he's on the yacht with Jennifer
Oh,
Connelly.
that's right.
Welcome to the Navy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
By the way, nobody wears helmets. Nobody wears life jackets. The same in Tron Legacy. Nobody wears helmets.
Yeah.
Do they not believe in
No, wait,
these
what
are
they
supposed
do,
to be?
you touch the back of your head and it goes over you.
No, I'm talking about
In
on
the
the
real
on
world.
on the motorbikes and in the
no.
yacht. And I'm
No,
like, these
no.
are the smartest flipping people. Do they not know how dangerous a motorcycle is? Where are the helmets?
Maybe they're just really libertarian.
I was thinking, they're not that smart.
I'll
The
tell
state
you.
can't tell me what to do.
I'll tell you why. I've got a note here that I made when I was comparing these 2 films and I was looking for similarities. Risk takers. Because
They're Mavericks.
They literally are, though. Garrett Hedlund does base jumping.
Yeah.
And the other dude, like Tom, whatever his name is, does like flying. They both ride motorcycles very fast. And they both wear leather jackets. Yeah. So there we go.
Do you know when the movie started with that wonderful sequence with Tom
Which
Cruise?
movie? Oh, yeah,
Top
yeah.
Gun Legacy. What's it called? Top Gun Maverick.
See? I called it Tron Maverick earlier. Tron Maverick and Top Gun Legacy. Yeah.
When he's flying into the stratosphere and he's pushing the limits, and then he
such
explodes.
a good opening.
And then the next it goes black, and the next sequence is him arriving at it. I was thinking, is this a? Are they doing a thing where we think this is immediately following, but actually that's the end of the film, and he
that's
actually
cool.
died. You know what I mean? Like, and we think that, and it actually, but no, that wasn't what was happening.
That opening sequence was so cool.
Yes.
And it was just ringing tension from a number ticking up to
Yeah.
10. Like the editing and the brief shots of whatever that fighter was, like skimming the atmosphere. Just incredible stuff, and what a way to start your movie.
Was it Ed Harris?
That was Ed
Yeah.
Harris.
Yeah.
And we all know now what G's are.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't. I'm like, oh yeah.
10 G's.
Give me more
10.1.
Yeah. These ones go to 11.
Oh no, it was sorry, it was Mac. It was Mac.
Yeah.
But just all the flight sequences, you guys. Just I mean, we've already talked about the verisimilitude of the whole thing, but man, whatever lens they use in these fighter jets, like, allows you to just see all around you, and it puts you in their seats.
Puts you in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
It's but it's so well put together, and we know exactly who everybody is,
Yeah.
and whether that's through a name or through I just thought it was really well put
With
together.
the new kids, I know you just said you find them a little bit
I
annoying.
did find them a little bit annoying.
But like I like how, they have just enough character. You know who everyone on the final
Who
mission
your goodie is, and
Yeah.
your selfish one is, and
Yeah.
your arrogant one is, and your team player is.
Yep.
I thought they were. I'm so gullible. I thought they were going to kill off Nerdy McNerdatron, but they didn't.
Nerdy McNerdatron.
I mean,
Bob.
was his name Bob?
Yeah.
I thought it was. Not
I
like
love
your
that. I
roommate.
love how they played with those because they're not just a film kind of what do you call it, cliche, but they're harking back to the
There's a
original.
trope,
There's a
but
trope.
yeah.
They're harking back to the original with those characters, and they play with them in a way that's really quite impressive. I thought Miles Teller was fantastic in this
Yeah.
movie, and he really held his own against the charisma of Tom Cruise.
And it's a very unusual, well, I say an unusual role for him to play. I guess it's not my typical Miles Teller kind of role, you know.
Yeah.
And you talk about them all having to get beefed up and tanned up as well. I mean, oh my God.
And they
put
went
some
through
clothes
Navy
on.
training to be in this movie. They had
Yeah.
to be in the fighters, obviously in the fighter jets, but they had underwater training. They had to escape from underwater stuff.
Wow.
It was really, really intense.
That is amazing.
I thought
Yeah.
John Hamm did a great job.
Oh, he
in
was
the role as well.
amazing. I
He's
forgot
great.
to write him down. He
Yeah.
was amazing.
Like, and he didn't overplay it. He just did what he was meant to do, which was be the villain that eventually sees the Maverick way. And advocates for him.
I thought when Maverick and Rooster were stuck in no man's land, that Cyclone, John Hamm himself, was going to get into one of those planes and save the day.
No, but for you, it had descended into such ludicrosity.
Yes,
that
it was-
you were like, why not?
that was James Bond Mission Impossible territory.
Yeah,
Oh,
maybe.
heck yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I was you back in the day. I was top of Top Gun. And it's like, oh man, he's itching to get back in that seat.
I loved the whole sequence as well of all of these young bucks thinking that they're better than they're the best of the best, and just they really did a great job of. He really puts them in their place, but you still really like Tom Cruise.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
how do
he's
they
not
do
arrogant
that?
about
Because it would be so easy to ostracize your audience.
Yeah.
But you're just like, do you show them Maverick? You are the best, and he always was the best, and that's a hard thing to pull off in this climate.
Do you know, I wonder whether, and we've touched on this every time we've talked about Tom Cruise in a film, I wonder, I really like what you just said, Jeremy, and I wonder whether we consciously know it or not, we all bring to our acknowledgement of his character that this is Tom frickin' Cruise, and he has earned our respect by dint of having learned how to fly millions of different types of helicopters and aeroplanes and, climb up Burj Khalifa for real, etc. You know what I mean? So you're absolutely right. When he, slightly diminutive fellow as he famously is, comes out with his flying jacket on, and he stands there and speaks quite calmly and quietly, it does have gravitas.
It's got a meta quality to it, isn't it? Because he's actually supporting these young actors.
Yeah, well, which is amazing, and he's done this in so many other movies recently as well. The Mission Impossible movies. He's taken like Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson. People, who have been relative unknowns in an action movie and turn them into action stars in their own right. I'm thinking of Edge of Tomorrow with Emily Blunt.
Oh, amazing.
And it's like he's letting his co-stars shine.
Apparently he is very gracious actor to
I've heard that as
perform
well.
with. Yeah, that's right. Very mana upholding, if you will.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a shame his religion is.
Yeah, well, But I mean, yeah.
Speaking of religion, how about that Tron Legacy? Am I
Yeah.
right, everyone?
Oh my gosh.
Kind of dip back into Tron a little bit.
Yes.
And actually, one thing, I would say it's a Maverick as well. Because both Kevin Flynn and Pete Mitchell, they're just Jesus, right?
I
mean,
think so, yeah.
It's so Jesus-y, it's not funny. But his plane, when he sacrifices himself, even makes like the shape of a cross before it falls down. And then Kevin Flynn, my goodness. Because, so you guys haven't seen the original Tron, but in the original Tron, that is Jeff Bridges at the peak of his charisma. Like, he's buff, he's super handsome, he's like California surfer dude. He still sprouts his mumbo jumbo about, digital jazz, man. Knock on the sky and listen. But like he is like, alpha male nerd.
Right.
And in the sequel, he becomes like Buddha and Jesus in one.
Barefooted and berobed as well.
Yeah.
He's also the dude
And the
Yeah.
dude, lots of the dude in this movie.
Yeah.
And when he walks into a room, when he walks into Michael Sheen's bar, and everyone just stops what they're doing, and there's this moment of religious like fervor. And everywhere he goes, he has this like a literal aura around him, which throws people away or draws people in. Like it's
nice
very,
reading.
very fun.
And also, of course, when Sam first arrives on the grid and meets Clue and looks at the face and thinks, "Oh, this is my dad," and Clue says to him, "I am not your father, Sam, but I am very pleased to see you." You know, I thought, at the time I was like, it's like Star Wars, you know, except it's I'm not your father. Yeah. But, that as well.
Can we talk about Clue?
Yeah.
What do you guys think? I mean, the tech
You mean
was...
the one with Tim Curry and all the actors? I love that film.
And the multiple endings.
I love
That's the right
that
one.
film. The film of the board game. Oh, wait, you mean the Jeff Bridges character?
Yes.
Oh, right.
So, I mean, the codified likeness utility. Because I
that what that
remember
is?
back in 2010, this was groundbreaking tech, and it didn't look right.
No, my thing is that there's that sequence at the start when he's Jeff Bridges and he's young with the son, and then there's also the sequence on the TV where he's talking. I just wish that they had somehow filmed that without ever seeing his face.
Yeah.
So that when Clue is in the
It's
computer
more of a
world,
reveal.
No, it's just because it looks fake.
Yeah.
So he looks computer generated.
Yes, but isn't he meant to look computer?
No,
Oh,
not in the
real
I
world,
see,
yeah.
I
Whereas
see.
if it's just in the
Yes, he does look super smooth.
When
doesn't
he's
he?
on TV, at least there's like a CRT filter, so it kind of hides it a little bit.
Right.
But when he's telling his son the story about Tron and all that, it's like, oh, who is this man?
Yeah, it's just like they need to find another way. Or that's like the thing that gets me, and I think I've talked about it before, is these massive big movies, and then they have a photograph from back. My father worked with da da da, and it's clearly a photoshopped image.
Right.
And it's all
He's
the
shaking
time.
hands with Kennedy.
Yeah, but it's just like the faces are all slightly weird because
Yeah.
they've photoshopped it poorly.
And the
it's
shadow's
like,
wrong.
Could you not just take a photo with them and like they look old, but we just suspend disbelief? Yeah.
To do what the Five Bloods did, where they were
I
just
like
old
that.
playing 20-year-olds.
That was the best part about that movie. There was not much.
Isn't
great
they
about the
didn't try
movie.
and fake it?
No, so the whole conceit
Yeah.
is that the Chadwick Boseman character who had died in Vietnam was young,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is quite sad now because he is
Yeah,
dead. But they were all
Unlike The Irishman, where they did
the
de-age
CG,
everybody.
yeah.
I think that's why I can't watch that movie. I haven't watched it.
I would say, we've come quite a while since Tron Legacy. It's 12 years, so much movie technology in the intervening years. And yet this de-aging stuff still just does not look right. Like you see Luke Skywalker in Mandalorian or Book of Boba Fett, and it's good. It's really good.
The deep fake stuff on YouTube looks amazing.
Oh, well, that is deepfake. I guess when you actually have people act with deepfake, I think that's the thing, right? So it looks like Mark Hamill back in 1986, and he sounds like Mark Hamill back in 1986.
I see, and his face moves like Mark Hamill because
Yes.
technically it is him.
But-
And then do they...
So that they use
superimpose onto him.
AI algorithms
Got
to see how the shadows move.
Yeah,
and all
right.
That. But there's something about it that still doesn't look quite right.
Yeah.
That uncanny valley just drags you completely out of it.
It's true, eh? It's like how the trick's done, so it doesn't matter how the trick's
Yeah.
done. I mean, it's interesting though. Like Tom Cruise's deep fake in Top Gun Maverick was pretty. Oh, that's just his face.
I thought you were being tricky.
He just hasn't aged, has he? He looks
Oh,
the
to
same.
be fair,
Apparently, he puts his face in ice water 5 minutes a day.
That's
Oh.
it. That's
Yeah.
what's done. That's all we need to do is put our face in ice water. All right, final thoughts, William.
Okay, Top Gun, super fun movie. One of my favorites of the year so far, I think. Just a real feel-good action movie. Like, we talked about it being a military movie. I find the hoorah, USA is actually way more obvious and ugly in the first movie. I feel like this one, they tone it down somewhat. It's much more, as you guys say, it's much more about the student-teacher relationship and about Tom Cruise, like, leading these young bucks to be the best that they can be. Plus, like, all that aerial footage, just wow-wee. Linking to Tron, both these movies, so clean, so well edited. Joe Kosinski, like, I'm a fan of this guy. He knows how to make a movie. He definitely knows how to make a movie that really just ticks and looks fantastic. Looks and sounds fantastic. Top Gun, the sound editing, mwah. And Tron Legacy, I was so glad to revisit it. Like, again, maybe it's too early to say so, but it's given me, like, heavy 2010s nostalgia. there's something about the movies of that era, especially ones that Disney were churning out. I have down here like Tomorrowland. You guys remember that? The Brad Bird movie? Or John Carter, previously mentioned. And they were big kind of financial disasters, but they had heart and they were unlike anything people had seen before. And Tron is definitely in that category. And it's kind of sad that, they don't get to make Tron 3. They had everything in place and then the Marvel and Star Wars stuff took off. But what we have is just such a fitting follow-up to the original Tron. Like, it's not a great movie, as I said before, but everything it has going for it in spades. And it's the definition of cult. Like, this is the kind of movie that people will remember for all its wonderful, wonderful qualities.
I can't really top anything. I mean, I can't even hardly meet anything that you said there, William. I would agree with you on the sound and light beauty of both films. I think they were both spectacular to watch. I would rather revisit Maverick than revisit Tron Legacy again, but I give it points for everything that it did at the time. I think really I am mostly just super impressed that was Joseph Kosinski's first film. It didn't seem probably like a gamble when they gave it to this guy with a background in commercials and architecture or whatever else. But the fact that 4 films in, he's doing Top Gun Maverick, I think is an extraordinary feat, and I think he absolutely blimmin' nailed it. I felt extremely nostalgic watching Top Gun, and I pre-welled up a couple of times thinking that I was going to have my heart broken, and I didn't know if they were going to kill off Val Kilmer or Tom or whomever, but I was anticipating the sadness, and I think also I projected, it probably wasn't there, but I projected into it that I've suddenly projected into Tom Cruise one day either dying or giving up acting, and that truly will be an end of an era for many of us, and I felt sad about that. And so to me, in a way, Top Gun Maverick it's not his final film, God willing. There will be that Mission Impossible and there will be a bunch of other stuff, but do you know what I mean? It felt like a real revisiting. It felt like this was the film that had made him massive. Here he is. I don't know, I felt sadness around that. I didn't feel any sort of sadness around Tron Legacy at all, and I don't have a whole lot to say about that film, but I do think it was super pretty, and I think it really worked for what it did in its time.
I agree with both of you. I really enjoyed both films. I really enjoyed revisiting Tron Legacy. I mean, that Daft Punk soundtrack is just wonderful. I mean, it's on my Spotify playlist. I sometimes just do listen to it when I'm studying or whatever, it's really quite a lovely listen. And not just for the electronic elements, there's some really incredible orchestral stuff.
Yes, very.
That's just great. And also now that Daft Punk have disbanded, it's quite lovely to see them, immortalized in film.
The movie.
They're in the movie, yeah.
And Michael Sheen tells them to play the hits, and it's amazing. It's like, give us something more upbeat.
Yeah. It's really, really great. And then, like I said, I've already kind of given you my overview of Top Gun Maverick, and then I went in with very low expectations and kind of wanting to not like the movie.
And you loved it. I'm
really enjoyed
thrilled that that's how you felt.
It just was really, really good. And I think that, we're really primed as not just as a nation, but internationally. I think about when Star Wars came out, it came out at a time where people were just kind of exhausted at being sad and being a bit nihilistic about the world. And I don't know if we're getting to that point, but I think we're still got a long ways to go with this pandemic. But people, like you said, William, I think are just wanting content that doesn't require anything of them because there's enough requiring us in the world at the moment. And I think that it's nice to watch a film like Top Gun Maverick, all of those Hey America, ho ho, whatever you said aside. Which you're right, is not a major part of the movie. But it's still there, let's be honest. That's still a pro-military film. Not as bad as, what was the military movie I watched the other day that was just terrible? Dog. Oh my gosh, it was such a bad film.
Well, I mean...
It was so bad, and it was just like, celebrate the army, and this main character's been traumatized. Anyways, by the by, final thoughts. Yes, loved both films. Thank you for listening to another episode of Cinema in Context. If you enjoyed our podcast, then please share it with your film-loving friends. You can listen to Cinema in Context through SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, and Amazon Music. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, which are great places to let us know what you think of this episode or give us suggestions for future films to discuss and compare. Look out for our next episode in a month's time, and until then, no mai!